Imagine waking up to headlines screaming that U.S. aluminum exports have collapsed by 94%, a figure so shocking it sounds like the end of an entire industry. But is this really the truth, or just another case of sensational hype? What's actually happening behind the numbers, and how do tariffs, shifting demand, and global trade tensions factor into this story? Before we break down the shocking claim that U.S. aluminum exports have collapsed by 94%, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the truth behind today's most dramatic headlines. The U.S. aluminum sector has reportedly collapsed catastrophically in recent weeks, according to headlines and viral videos, with some publications reporting that exports have been wiped out by 94%. Naturally, such a spectacular figure inspires apprehension and conjecture. In addition to being a historic drop for one of the most strategically significant metals in the world, if this is accurate, it may also be a crisis for a variety of industries, including the automotive and aerospace sectors. But the truth becomes much more complex when we look below the headlines and look at government studies, industry research, and trade data. There is little evidence to support the idea of a near-total collapse, despite the fact that the U.S. aluminum industry is encountering difficulties primarily related to tariffs, supply chain interruptions, and changing demand. Rather, a picture of a faltering but nonetheless operational industry that is being recalibrated under extreme economic pressure comes to light. Sensational headlines like these have the potential to obscure more factual but understated news. The financial and trade press would very surely cover a sharp 94% drop in U.S. aluminum exports, which would be unprecedented. However, outside of fringe criticism, there is no such reporting. The mainstream data, on the other hand, shows that the aluminum trade is down, but by a far lower amount. Trade policy has been the most significant element influencing the aluminum industry in 2025. The U.S. government levied a 25% tax on imports of steel and aluminum on March 12, 2025. The cost of importing aluminum into American markets skyrocketed when the tax was increased to 50% on June 4, just 3 months later. The goal of these taxes was to boost homegrown manufacturing and lessen dependency on imports, particularly from significant suppliers like Canada. They also had the effect of drastically reducing cross-border flows, though. Canadian aluminum shipments to the United States in June 2025 fell 43% year-over-year, from 232,600 metric tons in June 2024 to barely 132,700 metric tons in June 2025, according to S&P Global data. In June, total U.S. imports of unwrought aluminum decreased 25.6% from the previous year. Undoubtedly, this is a significant decrease, but it is still much below the 94% estimate that is going around the internet. Crucially, rather than a collapse in supply or demand, the reduction is a direct result of tariffs. Declining aluminum flows are also a result of broader market dynamics in addition to taxes. The Aluminum Association reports that the first quarter of 2025 saw a 4.4% decline in North American aluminum demand when compared to the same period in 2024. This covers both imports and domestic consumption. Dissecting the information further, shipments of aluminum ingot and associated goods have decreased by 15% so far this year, indicating a reduction in industrial demand. Shipments of mill products, which include extruded and rolled aluminum used in building, packaging, and transportation, fell 2.3%. These numbers show that the industry is contracting moderately as opposed to collapsing completely. Although it is decreasing, demand is still high in important industries, including infrastructure, automotive production, and aviation. The slowdown in Canadian manufacturing. One of the biggest trading partners of the United States for aluminum, Canada, has been particularly severely impacted. A major component of Canada's primary metals industry, aluminum production and exports, have sharply decreased as a result of the tariffs. The amount of Canada's aluminum exports decreased by more than 34% in April 2025, while the metals sector's output volume decreased by 4.4% at the same time. This was a component of a larger manufacturing slowdown in Canada, as overall sales fell 2.8%, the most since 2022. These decreases highlight how reliant Canadian business is on the American market. They also demonstrate how tariff policies can have an impact on regional economies that are tightly connected by supply chains, in addition to having an impact beyond national boundaries, disproving the 94% collapse theory. The differences are evident when we contrast the verifiable statistics with the viral claim. According to S&P Global, unwrought aluminum imports into the United States fell 25.6% overall in June 2025, with shipments from Canada falling 43%. According to the Aluminum Association, ingot shipments fell 15% in Q1 2025, while North American demand fell 4.4%. Aluminum shipments fell 34% in April 2025, according to Canadian industry. These numbers don't even approach a 94% collapse. Rather than a systemic breakdown, they indicate a notable but controllable decline in trade, which is consistent with interruptions brought on by tariffs. Why do these allegations proliferate? The 94% collapse narrative's tenacity illustrates how sensationalism frequently triumphs over subtlety in public discourse. This pattern can be explained by three main factors. Statistics on the aluminum trade are not always straightforward to understand. Multiple product categories, reporting agencies, and periods are all involved. Because of this intricacy, data might be used selectively or improperly. A 94% collapse rate is a remarkable number that immediately draws notice. Content producers are highly motivated to exaggerate in the digital age, since views and clicks instantly result in income. The public is ready to believe stories about an economic catastrophe because they are more concerned with supply chains, inflation, and industrial competitiveness. Even when collapse stories don't align with the underlying facts, they nonetheless have resonance. The strategic value of aluminum. Aluminum is still a vital component of contemporary economies, even in the current recession. It is essential in many industries due to its conductive qualities, durability, and lightweight. Aluminum is still used in the United States for aerospace and defense. High-strength aluminum alloys are necessary for military vehicles and aircraft. Automotive manufacturing. Aluminum's low weight contributes to vehicles and trucks' increased fuel efficiency. Construction and infrastructure. Electrical systems, bridges, and building facades all make extensive use of aluminum. Packaging and consumer goods. Aluminum is used extensively in everyday life, in anything from electronics to beverage cans. Because of its strategic significance, aluminum will continue to be a major industrial and trade policy emphasis. Supply chains may change as a result of short-term interruptions, but long-term demand is unlikely to decline. One of the most interconnected aluminum trading connections in the world exists between the United States and Canada. Historically, Canada has been the U.S.'s top supplier of aluminum, making up over half of its imports in various years. The United States still relies on Canadian aluminum to meet its domestic needs despite tariffs. Tariff pressures are the reason for the steep drop in exports, but the relationship is still intact. In actuality, Canadian manufacturers are still in a better position to serve the U.S. than exporters from farther away because of their close proximity and well-established infrastructure. The idea of a near-total collapse is made much less likely by this interconnectedness. Tariffs may change routes and volumes, but they cannot break the essential links between the industries of the two nations. In 2025, we are seeing more of a recalibration than a collapse. Both manufacturers and consumers are being forced to adjust due to tariffs and changing demand patterns. While American manufacturers are reconsidering their sourcing tactics, Canadian exporters are looking for new markets. At the same time, there is pressure on local U.S. producers to boost capacity. It's still unclear if American smelters can scale up fast enough to cover the shortfall caused by lower imports. The rate at which domestic supply may grow is constrained by labor shortages, energy prices, and environmental rules. Although the process of adjustment is upsetting, the industry is not going to vanish. Rather, it shows how incentives have been realigned under the new policy circumstances. The tale of the aluminum trade is continuously developing. The following variables will impact the industry's course in the upcoming year. Policy stability. Trade flows will probably continue to be restrained as long as tariffs are in effect. A quick recovery could result from any reversal. Global competition. China continues to be the world's largest producer of aluminum, and its export policies will influence availability and cost worldwide. Local capacity. The United States must choose between continuing to rely on imports, although at a greater cost, or making significant investments in local smelting capacity. Industrial demand. Aluminum's economic dominance will be maintained by sustained demand growth in industries like electric cars and renewable energy infrastructure. If you found this breakdown helpful and want to stay ahead of the biggest shifts in global trade and the economy, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update.